Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is a show where I can talk about sports, I can talk about business, and I can talk about everything in between. Today, my incredible guest, John Yeager, he's the author of The Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. John, how are you on this beautiful Wednesday night?
I'm great, Michael. Really, really excited to be on the show with you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you reaching out, and I'm excited to ask you maybe not a million questions. That's a little much. But the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
I love sports because it's changed my life. It's an opportunity, and I'm not going to get into all the cliches about why people do sports, about believe in something greater than yourself and other stuff like that. But it's true to a certain degree, and I've always loved competition, and I've also always loved the collaboration with teams, but also the collaboration that actually happens from between teams and other teams. If you think of Gonzaga in the semifinals, not the finals, but in the semifinals when they won with the buzzer beater with Jalen Suggs, and he's hugging this player from UCLA right afterwards. It's really cool stuff because they pushed each other as far as they could, and his shot just happened to go in at the end. And so those are kind of wonderful moments there. And I think in many ways, sports allows us to feel complete in different ways. The next day can be a little bit different in the next game. And this doesn't matter whether in your youth, high school, college, or even the pro game.
And yeah, that happens. And we saw it a lot in the women's NCAA tournament as well. I watched as many of those games because they were just as crazy, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, you do see that a lot between teams, right? Especially in college, I think a little bit more. And once they get to the pros, all these guys kind of know each other already at some point, and there's a lot of more money on the line. Let's just say that. And It's always very, very interesting to me to see kind of how that shakes out. And I'm just disappointed, John. I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of wanted Gonzaga to win because now that Jalen Suggs shot means pretty much nothing. That's kind of gone into the ether, and it's just. I saw it live. I was completely shocked. My mouth fell open. I didn't know what to do, and now unfortunately, it doesn't really mean that much. Just like there was a catch in the Super Bowl, Seahawks. I think Doug Baldwin made an acrobatic catch, but it doesn't matter because all we remember is there was an interception, and the Patriots end up winning that game. But that's why we love sports, right? It's real life drama.
It certainly is. It certainly
is. That's what we love to do.
We take a risk every time we step over that line as athletes, as coaches, and as fans, to Absolutely. Be part of not sure what's actually going to happen.
Absolutely. So obviously we're going to talk a little bit of sports during this conversation, but I want to get into the psychology aspect of some stuff with you a little bit. Where does your love of psychology come from? Because I took a psychology class in high school and it was the most boring class I took. And I never really paid attention to psychology too much after that. So tell me why I should have paid attention in that class when I was 18.
Well, I've always been fascinated with the why of behavior, why people do things. And in my book, I talk about why do coaches coach, and so that's always been very interesting to me. And I think I had a lot of background in looking at the psychology of health behavior in a variety of different areas, physical, emotional, mental, moral, social, and those types of areas. And so it allowed for me to begin to look at motivation, and in the crux of the different ways that people tend to be motivated, to perform, whether it's in business, in education, in sports. So that's where my, that first love of that came there. And it actually came from an early experience that I had. And I really believe our stories tell a lot about who we are. And as we're talking about sports stories in the pros and college just recently, I was 11 years old and I was running in a road race, July 4th road race. And I got to the starting line and everybody else was like 10 years older than me. And I felt totally out of place. Could hear my heart rate's beating fast. My hands are going cold and clammy. And I look over at my father and he gives me a smile. And it was just the right smile at the right time for the right reason. And what it was is, John, you want to do this? Or you don't want to do it? Your call. You make the call. And so I sucked it up, got on the line. A starter's gun went off. 3 miles later, I came in dead last. People were cheering for me, because the parade was catching up to me afterwards.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But I remember out of that about my father's kind capacity to be there for me, give me some autonomy, but also give me some hope, at that time. And, you've had Mitch Green on before, and he talks a lot about this concept of courage over confidence. And I didn't really have a lot of confidence there, but it was more of a courageous piece that went with the fear that helped me through that. And since then, I've always tried to do that as an athlete playing at the high school, college, and pro levels, and then also as a coach and as a coach of coaches. I find that as that primary piece is really, what's your story? What do you bring to the narrative, and what does that do and bring to the athletes that you serve?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, right? Like understand it's funny, right? As you said, you were terrified when you stepped up to the line and then you did it and you're like, that really wasn't that bad, right? What's on the other side of fear? Nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a million different whatever, if you what's it when you line up fear and then they have all the words FEAR, whatever they mean. I don't know, whatever I'm thinking of. But there's just so many things that once you do it, you're kind of like, oh, I really wasn't that bad. And you bring up business, you bring up coaching, you bring up being an athlete and, stepping in between those lines. And it's always so funny to me that I'm always afraid to do something until I do it. And I'm just like, why the hell was I afraid of that? It's stupid. And it's the unknown, right? You don't know what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And just same thing through, navigating through with sports through COVID with so much uncertainty there about coming back, there too, going into the Masters tomorrow. The last 3 days have been, peaches and cream for the golfers because it's been beautiful days out. And then, but what will the pin placement be like tomorrow? What will the pressure be like tomorrow when money's on the line there? And it's not the same course it was last November. And so all these factors come in there, and so I think it's really, I've always been interested in how do athletes pay attention to the present moment. And, mindfulness, people will say, well, it's over talked about or overrated, but it really isn't. Being in present moment, in everything that we do, really gets the most out of the things that we do, whether they're in sports or other aspects of life.
Being present is something that I work on literally on it. I was working on it today. It's so funny. If you're ever thinking of the past or you're ever thinking of the future, maybe you have the statistic 9 times out of 10 is usually negative, I think, right? So if you're not present, you're usually thinking of something bad. And I truly do believe, pay attention to what you're saying because you're always listening, right? Pay attention to what you say to yourself because you're always listening. And if you're consistently thinking negative thoughts, either from the past or what could potentially go wrong in the future, that's a recipe for destruction. So that was happening to me today. I literally was like, okay, I know this is not good. I know this is something that happened 10 years ago and it literally didn't matter at that time and it doesn't matter right now. I don't know why I'm thinking of it. So just got up, took like a lap around my house, small house, so it didn't get too far, sat back down and it was gone and it was good. And I truly believe mindfulness and self-awareness, other people call it, is an absolute superpower. And I want to get to that a little bit later when we talk about your book, because I know self-awareness is something you're very keen on. But you said a couple things during that during this little back and forth that I want to touch on, especially, and I'm grateful you picked up the Masters because A, I'm excited to watch every hole I can, right? B, golf is right next to baseball, I would say. One of the two, you're in your head. There's really not too much going on most of the time, right? There's a total of like 6 seconds of actual, right? Like, so talk to me a little bit about that and like how athletes can take advantage of some of these things because, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't care about it. 10 years ago, we didn't talk about it. 15 years ago. And now it's super, super prevalent. How have you seen that change in athletes over your time of being in this space?
I think it's come to, the sports psych piece to that, the mental side of the game has become so important, and just because in any sport, and that goes along with it, there's a variety of distractions. And many times athletes who are able to pay attention back to the mindfulness piece, sets distraction off to the side a little bit. And so I think it's really critical that, athletes have set up situations where they're really consistent and they've played over events, over and over time, so that when they get up to bat coming out of a slump, okay, or the pitcher has a rubber arm or a golfer has the yips, all these different things come in there, and those are kind of horror movies that are lodged in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
the prefrontal cortex. Okay. And basically what can happen out of there, it drums up what's called in the mindfulness genre, the drunken monkey. Okay. And almost think of like a monkey running around your head crazy. And that's what it feels like when you're thinking all these different thoughts, as opposed to gearing into what you need to do in the moment and not thinking about it. What's interesting is, and this comes from outside of sports, but it's very much applied to sports, is the work of Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in physics. Not, it wasn't physics. I'm not sure what it
He won
was,
a
but
Nobel
anyways,
Prize. Either was, it's
won a
impressive.
Nobel Prize. But he wrote a great book called "Thinking Fast, Thinking
Mm-hmm.
Slow,"
Mm-hmm.
and we actually do that. So most in the athletic environment, you tend to want to think fast, which means you're not thinking a lot. You're doing things that are happening right at that moment. You're using the contagion of practiced activity before. It's automatic and it's coming right out there, for good or for ill. And then that's system one thinking. And so but the other side of that, system two, and that's a little bit more laid back. It's deliberate. It's what you work on in practices to develop skills, to develop a focus towards what you want to do. I think one of the big issues with inattention and an attentional error that happens in sports, Michael, is when somebody starts overthinking in system two, okay, about that next shot. Okay, I was just reading an article about Amen Corner at the Masters in Augusta, and so if people are thinking of that 3 or 4 holes before, that's a recipe for disaster. It doesn't
Absolutely.
really count until you actually have an approach shot to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so I think that's important. But the thing is, to be deliberate in what you're going to do in the moment is really important. So in many ways, athletes are learning how to train themselves, or have other coaches or sports psychologists help to train them to pay attention in the right frame of mind in those areas. And the more that they can do that, the more that they can succeed. I was talking to a high school ice hockey goalie who I work with, and he had mentioned he had read something about Brendan Holtley, who's the goalie, one of the goalies for the for Washington and the Caps. And basically, he was asked once, try to be mindful for 2 minutes, and he lasted 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's practiced that. He's done it over and over and over again. Hence Headspace and other apps like that to really help you, allow for yourself to be there in that moment. And I think as the ages have gone on and with the technology, it allows us to be distracted so much more. And so these are the things that athletes have to work on now to maintain their edge,
Yeah,
because other people are getting there. It reminds me of what's called the Red Queen effect. Okay. And it's used in science a lot. And basically it's the predator-prey relationship. So in Alice Through the Looking Glass, never thought we'd be talking about Alice in Wonderland here. The Red Queen says to Alice, Alice, you got to do all the running you can to just stay ahead of the game. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. And Alice is going, what? Okay. And that sports are like that to a certain degree. Okay, so if you look and how much strategy has gotten more complex, equipment has gotten incredible amount better. Okay, athletes are quicker, faster, stronger, bigger or smaller, or whatever you need them to be in that situation. Okay, to specialize for that, but so many other people are doing the same thing. So the edge is that you can't. The edge is that, if you're you're the predator, okay, if the prey doesn't speed up, it gets eaten. And if you're the prey, if you don't speed up, the predator is going to get you. So we're continually learning new types of strategies, which behooves athletes and coaches, and especially coaches now, to really to understand more of the psyche of the athlete. not necessarily their own psyche when they were athletes,
Hmm.
but to understand the psyche of the athlete now and to understand their stories so they can be there as an amateur sports psychologist for them in the field of play.
Yeah, and that's where you come in. You're the coach of coaches, right? And I think one thing, a couple things you said in there that I really, really like. I practice mindful meditation every single day. It's hard, and it's something that I've done. I want to say for every single day for the last like 2.5 years. I want to say I like
Wonderful.
have it in my calendar every single day. Some days I'm great, some days I'm terrible, right? But like the whole idea, what people don't understand, at least what I've kind of gathered from meditation and mindful meditation specifically, is it's not about relaxing. It's about just being okay with everything, right? It's about understanding where you are specifically again in that moment and being comfortable or being okay, I guess that's the best way I can say it, with whatever the hell is happening. Doesn't mean you have to be relaxed. It means you can kind of breathe and understand what's going on. I think that's something that can absolutely help athletes, especially when we get to those high stress moments.
Yeah, it's noticing what's going on and not attaching to it.
Hmm.
So they scored a goal. Okay.
Cool. Now we
Yep.
got us. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now's an opportunity.
And
Okay.
then another thing that you said that I think again, it's looking ahead to Amen Corner. It happens all the time, and let's just say football, because I think it's the most prevalent. Those look ahead games, right? This team should absolutely destroy this team, but next week, Michigan has Ohio State, so they're playing against some cupcake this week, and we'll see what happens. And they usually win those games, but it's one of those things where, it's a little feistier. You didn't really quite expect it. You could kind of tell they were just kind of going through the motions, looking ahead to that game next week. I don't know why I use Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan always loses that. But, it's just one of those things where I think in team sports and specifically football, you see that a lot too. And obviously in golf, it's a little bit quicker of a turnaround. But in football, I think it could be even more of a detriment in, kind of looking ahead an entire week and not really paying attention to just the team in front of you.
Right. And I think that behooves coaches in organizations to help athletes do things. There's non-negotiables that you do over and over and over again. So no matter who you are playing when you're out on the field, that's what matters most.
Absolutely.
That's what matters most there. But human nature, comes into play, as you say, Michael, and that becomes even more difficult. It's almost predictable at times. When we can be predictably irrational, and make those mistakes. So Ohio State kind of, jumps out there, and then you look at Loyola just, jumping all over Illinois, and so those are the ideas that, you stay the course, you stay with that. I was really excited to see how, that Gino Auriemma with the UConn has such a young team, but they just stayed with the process through what they did, continually. And that allowed them to get as far as they probably could get in that tournament there.
Then they got beat up. But hey, it happens. What are you gonna do? What is it, 12 straight Final Fours? I mean, worse things have happened, right?
That's right.
And another thing you said, what was so you said why coaches coach. I wrote that question down. That's going to be my segue just for people to, we'll get to that question in a second. But I know one thing that you said, and I wrote it down, and we kind of spoke a little bit about it through our email communication, was positive psychology. So psychology, I didn't know was negative or positive. I thought it was just like more of an understanding, but you practice what is at least termed positive psychology. Talk to me a little bit about that before we get into the book one more time, The Coaching Zone. What is positive psychology, John?
So many times when people look at traditional psychology, they look at the notion of, if there's something wrong with you, you want to fix it. Okay. Positive psychology, which was coined by UPenn professor Marty Seligman in probably back in the late 90s, early 2000s, is basically about the psychology of flourishing. What are the things that you do well, and how can you do more of that? Okay. Now, that's not if somebody has a clinical psychological issue. Some positive psychology can be used in that, but there needs to be a variety of other different strategies that are used too. But with positive psychology, it really has a strong focus on strengths, resilience, and optimism. It actually, focuses on to the point of what's called psychological capital. Okay. And so if you think that in sports, we've got human capital, and basically what that is the knowledge and skills of athletes and coaches. your social capital, which are the social relationships, the connections, the team and task cohesion there. But psychological capital, which is coined by Fred Luthans of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, he talks about 4 different characteristics: hope, efficacy or confidence, resilience, and optimism. And having those 4 areas can be measured, and by working on those can allow for athletes in all types of, people in all different types of environments to actually flourish. In some ways it's slightly related to grit, but if we take those 4 areas when combined together on a team, that's where you end up fitting the jigsaw puzzle together to get really, really effective teams, because you've got collective confidence or collective efficacy. So if an athlete is hopeful, they're basically willing something to happen, not wishing it to happen. As one parent once told me, his son really wished he could hit the ball, and every time he'd get up in Little League, he wouldn't swing at it, and he'd either strike out or walk. So he came up, the last inning in that 3-2 playoff game, and he had to bat, because that's the way the league was, in amount of innings that you get to play and you get to bat. And he just, stood there and didn't swing, and 3 pitches went by and he struck out. They lose the game. The parents around the corner are muddling, "Oh, why did they let that happen?" Stuff like that. Get home, and the son goes to the father, Dad, I really want to hit. I really want to hit. Be able to hit." And the father says, "That's great, son. Let's get your batting coach. We'll do everything. We'll go the high 9 yards." He goes, No, Dad. I really want to hit. I don't want to work at it. I just want to do that. And that's the bottom line, is it willing it. And what hope is about is setting goals, of course, but also what are the pathways of those goals? And if one pathway gets broken down, what's the other pathway? And I know coaches and athletic programs this whole past year have been using different pathways because of COVID, trying to get practices in, trying to get games in, and things like that. And then the third piece is agency. And that means that you have the capacity to move forward. It's almost in many ways like confidence. Okay. And so where you have that capacity to with confidence, to have those mastery experiences that you've had before, and then you kind of try something new, and you look at those mastery experiences, and they can help you get to that point. And then also resilience and not just bouncing back, but bouncing forward.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly, the coach at Notre Dame football, once said his athletes are really good at bouncing back, but it's some of those special athletes that really grow and move forward there. And that last piece is optimism. And I think of Sandra Schneider's work at University of South Florida on realistic optimism. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that athletes who have a leniency for the past, and are actually can kind of develop some false memories, of what they've done, with some mistakes that they've made that get in their way of their present, but also appreciating what goes on in the moment in the present, and then looking forward to the opportunities in the future. And when those 4 things come together, athletes have that level of PsyCap that really helps them to be ready in that moment and ready to go. And if coaches can pick up on what area an athlete might need to be working on, they can actually, with some of their knowledge, they can help that athlete get to that point.
Why coaches coach? As I said, that was going to be my segue into the piece about the book. And I had hero written down here on my sheet to talk about during the book. So we took care of a little bit of that. We talked already about self-awareness. We're talking about a lot of these things. So obviously we have touched upon many of these points, but let's put some of this together. John Yeager, author of The Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. Why do coaches coach? Because I have personally spoken to hundreds of athletes, right? I've spoken to many, many people, hundreds of people in the business world, that some are high up, some are low, but they have leadership qualities and leadership skills. Most of the athletes that I talk to that end up being coaches is because they just love their sport and wanted to kind of stay at it. Now that's at the Olympic level. That's at the highest of the highest of the
Sure,
highest, the high
sure,
level,
sure.
which is probably a little different than your local high school basketball coach. Who the hell am I though? I don't know. So you answer that question. I've only asked it like 3 times. Why do coaches coach, John?
Tons of reasons, 100 different reasons for 100 different coaches. But a couple that come to my mind are similar to what you're talking about, Michael, is that if they were athletes, they kind of vicariously still live within the sport through what they do next. And they end up just like the Lion King, transferring some of their skills and their understanding, their experiences in their stories to other athletes. I've found some of the most effective coaches out there and at different levels have such a good level of self-awareness, and they're such lifelong learners that they're able to make that difference in other people's lives. So I think that is a huge piece in there, of why. And some of it also is a reason is the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's going for the brass ring. It's as Drew Hyland, the sports philosopher from Trinity, once said, sports help to make us feel complete. Okay. And then secondly, he says that sports in many ways, once we step over the line, we're not sure really exactly what's going to happen.
That's true.
And so that can be really exciting, and to go through that and to feel that, that you have in there. So it's a whole variety of different areas that reasons that people go into it. And sometimes people go into it so that they can they can pump themselves up, okay? And unfortunately, in some cases, some coaches have an obsessive passion for the sport, okay, to the point where it really gets in the way of other aspects of their life, and sometimes in their athletes' lives. And there's some of their reasons to coach are more selfish oriented, okay. And
Kind of like living through your kids kind of thing.
yeah, living through your kids without giving your kids autonomy. Okay. And then coaches might do that also. Some coaches might also do that too. So I'm very keen on looking at having coaches become, look at their own self-awareness, as a lifelong learner, what are the stories that you have had, that brings up your strengths and your shortcomings to allow for you to be who you are, as a coach today. And then what are the stories that you actually tell your athletes, okay, to help to bring them in there? Where's that pep talk coming from? Okay. And who's the pep talk for? Sometimes pep talks are for coaches. Okay. And they have to make sure that they're making sure that it's for their athletes, because it's basically coaches are not the main actors in the process. Okay. And it are the athletes there. Can I digress and tell one quick story that got me into coaching and why?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Okay.
So let me ask it. So John, what got you into coaching and why?
It happened in my senior year in college, playing lacrosse at Boston State, which is now UMass Boston. I had hair down to my shoulders, brown,
Nice.
parted in the middle with a headband piece. Okay,
Love it.
we were a bunch of hippies at Bo State. Okay, and we were playing back in the mid '70s. We're playing in. I'm an old guy. We're playing in against Bowdoin College in our first game of the season. And our field, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Boston at all, but our field was 3 miles away from the Fenway campus. It was actually close to where Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play. So we'd drive over every day to our practice field, and then our field was just a lot of dirt, a little grass, and some broken glass from the bar around the corner. And we were separated with a chain link fence from the pristine fields of Harvard. So every day of practice and games, I could see Harvard Stadium. So it was pretty cool, and eventually when I work with Harvard men's and women's swimming team, and it's really exciting, to be working in there. And then I can look back out at the field that I used to play on, many, many years ago. So anyways, we get to the game. I'm excited. I'm a goalie. Some people call us courageous. Some people call us stupid. Okay. I get out there and I play absolutely awful. I wish coach could have taken me out, but my backup goalies were not ready for prime time. So we ended up getting crushed. So I grieved for the next couple of days because that was my identity at that time. But fortunately, 2 days later on Thursday, we were playing Middlebury College at our home field. So we actually were late for our own home game playing them because we went to get out of it was like it was early around this time, April back 45, 46 years ago. And we couldn't get out of Boston because it was Red Sox home opener.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of students cut classes that day to go to the game. And so we finally got to the game. Middlebury was always already there. And they're a bunch of really, really clean cut guys. And their head coach looked like he was ex-military, barking out instructions here. And so I say, okay. And so I'm saying, there's that drunken monkey in the back of my head. So I get in the goal after the warm-ups. The first shot goes in on me. I'm okay. It's okay. Okay, center, and I didn't even know the term center then. I didn't even know the term present moment. Next shot goes 5-hole through my legs. And I'm saying, oh no. And then the guy shot it again and I reacted well, made the save, cleared it out. We score. We're down 2-1. We tie up 2-2. Ball becomes like a beach ball to me. We win the game 6-2. Best game I ever played in my life. However, that's not why I tell the story. That's the setup for what happened in the second period when the coach of the other team called a timeout. Rob Pfeiffer, and he called timeout, and we dutifully ran over to our bench, and one of our guys on our team, Ronnie and Jemmy, and Ronnie had shaved half his beard off before the game to pump us up. So I'm not sure what was up with that. So he runs into there was something going on with him because he runs into the Middlebury huddle instead of the Boston State huddle. And you just don't do that. And the Middlebury players going, what are you doing, Ronnie? Okay. And he goes through there, jumps on the back of the coach of the other team, comes off the back. The coach turns around. Ronnie takes his helmet off, half a beard, and they look up at each other. They smile and they both begin to cry. And they hug each other. And the backstory, we didn't know what it was, but the backstory actually was that when Ronnie heard Pfeiffer's voice call the timeout, the last time he had heard that specific intonation of that voice was 6 years before in Vietnam, and Pfeiffer was Ronnie's platoon commander.
Whoa.
Big time timeout. Somebody asked, you ever remember your timeouts? Yeah, that one.
That one, I'd say. Holy crap.
That one. I'm friends with Middlebury players today because of that.
Yeah, that's intense. Hard to forget that.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And so it's, it's our stories that said that there was a collaboration there with the other team. And so I really look at sports in that way. Nobody, really enjoys a rout. Okay. Fans don't, and people love it when you get those tight games, and just, you're watching Stanford woman versus Arizona woman, just come down to, last shot, and that where each team pushed each other to that point. And that's really helped to give me that why, to give people an opportunity at different levels to experience that. And I can be there to serve them and help them through that process, whether it would be, a high school when I coached there, or I was an assistant coach in the old major indoor lacrosse league that I played in. Also, anything like that, that's really, really powerful. So I liked having coaches tell their stories, because it helps to look at 4 different things. And you can think of the acronym SARI, S-A-R-I. What was the situation? What was the action? What was the result? What's the insight? So why are you here right now? Ready to go with it? Yeah. Okay, let's go. And so that's pretty cool stuff. So I kind of, with the book on, I wanted to kind of flip things a little bit from constantly looking at sports psych for the athletes and the X's and O's and stuff like that, to look at, what's the psychology of coaching? How can coaches, continue to learn and be mentors of other people by knowing themselves, being able to self-regulate, and to have that level of self-awareness.
It's like you're looking at my notes because you answered like 3 of my questions during all that. But they're incredible stories, and that's why I do this. That's why this is my favorite thing I get to do, because I get to hear. I would have never heard that story, John, if I didn't have you on my podcast. So I really do appreciate you coming on one more time, John Yeager, author of The Coaching Zone: Next Level Leadership in Sports, and it's coming out tomorrow, or it just came out last week?
It's up on Amazon right now, cool. But It's the official launch day is tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Okay, April 8th,
April
and
8th. We'll have the link down in Amazon for everyone to in the podcast, so you can go check that out. You can buy the book right there.
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and then for tomorrow, because of launch day, the Kindle copy is $1.99.
Love it.
So we've changed the price to that because we want as many coaches as possible to get the book. And there's a bonus gift that goes with it. I sound like a shamelessly promoting the book here. And the bonus gift,
why we're here,
for everybody who purchases the book, is they get to download a link that has all 47 exercises that are in the book, so they can download it to have it in hard copy to use with themselves as coaches and their athletes. Because so often people try to write in the books.
Yeah.
And it's really, the Kindle's not going to give you that opportunity either to do that much in it. So that they can do that, and it's just that, being able to play and also coach for around 45 years, I was able to, in many ways, Michael, just get to learn about so many different types of coaches, for good or for ill. And the 50 or so coaches and sports psych people that I interviewed for the book, they all tended to gravitate in a direction that was really consistent with what I wanted the book to go in. It was neat, and it helped that I knew most of them too beforehand.
Probably helped a little bit.
But I go back and I think of my own coaches, of my high school cross country coach, Len Collin, and I wasn't a very good runner. Even after that 3-mile road race when I was 11, and I ended up quitting playing soccer in my senior year. But that Len didn't know a lot about running, but man, he could get you excited about it. And that was great. Then George Wheeler, my high school soccer coach that I had my senior year, then I coached under him years afterwards in Framingham, Massachusetts. And he just has, his optimism was just glowing all the time, And so I look at that, and I look at some of the other coaches that I've had, just really, they had things that really changed people's lives, and I've been, one of my former athletes just passed away. He had injured in a fall years ago. And back on Facebook the last couple of days with former players who I haven't spoken with, even by social media in years, got back to communicating. And one of them said he remembered coming over to my house after his freshman year, and that had to be in the mid 70s, 76, 77. And some of the games that we played back there and over at the house. And I'm saying, wow, you remember that? And so that says something to the power that coaches have out there. And the important thing is the children are listening. Everybody is listening to what you do. So the coach becomes an emotional role model. They become a much more important person in people's lives. And some of them expect they should be or can be out there.
And on that point, like, how much of coaching is so much on the field, right? But you obviously just brought up multiple points and multiple pieces that has nothing to do with sports. And through the interviews, through the book, through what you know about coaching and coaching coaches, how much have you found that really it's the off the field stuff, it's the outside the lines things that are really just the most impactful and can even impact people and their performance on the field?
I totally agree. I mean, sport is one part of a person's life. It's a vehicle for happiness for most part, right? Joy and satisfaction and performance.
I'm a Mets fan, so I actually can't be happy. So that's just something to throw out there 3 games into the season.
Sure. Okay. Well, I was a Red Sox fan before 2004. Okay. And so, I could feel your pain. I felt your pain back then. But anyways, in '86, but anyways, where was I going with this?
Sorry. Pain was being a baseball fan. On the field, off the field.
Yeah, off the field stuff is just that, what goes on off the field is critically important, and coaches ought to know as much as they can about an athlete, about what their likes and dislikes are, how they can support them there. Whether they had, whether a student athlete was dissed by a teacher in class, or there was a situation at home, just to know those types of situations, and not to mind read. Okay. And to be there and to be supportive and to cultivate the connection. And by cultivating the connection, it's developing what we call a vulnerability trust. And that vulnerability trust is the capacity for a coach to, show their own failings at times too, which can allow for the athlete to be more comfortable if they do make a mistake and know that they're not going to be railed for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that building that trust up. And at the same time, coaches needing to be empathetic to really understand the overall perspective of their athlete. What's it like to be an under 9 softball player today? What's it like to be, I work with UMass men's lacrosse, and 4 of the seniors came back for a graduate year, and they were waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally got games in. But one of the greatest fears was that their last game had already been played. Well, what's going through the mind there? Well, the head coach, Greg Cannella, who's great there, he understands that, and he sees that in them. Sometimes coaches have a difficulty, what they call the hot-cold empathy gap. That means that they've been there, done that, so they don't see what it's like to be a 9, 13, 15-year-old, or 25 or 26-year-old pro player, the importance of that, they can try to understand that, and that the athlete knows that they matter to that coach. Okay. And that's, a coach basically says, I am here for you unconditionally, as you sign off on your emails.
Every single one. Yep.
Unconditional. No matter what. I am here for you. Speaks volumes there too. And sometimes coaches say, well, I don't have the verbiage and the verbal communication to do that. And I go, well, what do you do by example? Do that by example. Just like my father smiled there. You do that through those actions there, when the athlete really, really needs that, And so, it's really interesting. I saw recently online a picture of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he was at UCLA with Coach Wooden, who was looking up at him and, talking about some sort of strategy. Then it had right next to that picture
that one,
of Coach Wooden in his 80s and Jabbar, at his age at the time, holding Wooden's hand. The mentor-mentee relationship is reciprocal. Now, what's interesting is that coaches don't really enjoy coaching at times, don't enjoy coaching some athletes too. And that's where you have to end up faking it to make it and try to find strategies that will bring out the best in the athlete. That we can have biases at times, so some people listening that says, well, this is a pretty tall order for coaches, to do. And it is, but if the rewards are so great, if you kind of take and look at this stuff a little bit more and try it out, and you find out that it works. It's a foundation. It reminds me of the Journey song, and I'm dating myself, Don't Stop Believing.
You're not dating. Everybody knows that song, John. Come on.
Well, I'm dating from when it first came out.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But it's the idea of belief. That belief system. Does Jordan Spieth, go into Masters tomorrow with confidence after winning last weekend? Does John Rahm go in with a certain amount of confidence because he hasn't focused on golf for the last 5 days because his child was born? And, one of the greatest moments of his life. So, will he play well just because he may not need to worry about Amen Corner?
Yeah, he's got better things to worry about.
And then how do their coaches who coach them help support them in that area, And how do we do that as coaches in other sports and allow to our athletes to kind of learn from us? Yeah.
I love it. Well, I can't wait. I'm going to buy the book tomorrow. As you said, that is the official launch date. It is available right now on Amazon. One more time, John Yeager, author of The Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. I just said it. Now you say it. Tell us where we can find the book everywhere, where how much it is, and give me the name just one more time.
Yeah, the name of the book is The Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. You can get it on Amazon, in paperback and in Kindle, and it might even be at $1.99 right now. But
Ooh.
and it'll be definitely into $1.99 tomorrow. And you can get that. You can get the PDF from the Kindle in there and put that log that onto your computer, and then you can get your the bonus gift there with the playbook of strategies that you have there too. The website for the book is www.thecoachingzonebook.com, thecoachingzonebook.com. Best email to get me at is john@yeagerleadership.com. You can reach me at John M. Yeager on Facebook and John Yeager on LinkedIn. And then if you go to the website, you just sign in for more information, and just be coming out with weekly newsletters and things like this to really kind of promote not just the book, but here it is right here, folks.
Oh,
Just
very nice.
promote it right away. But to give coaches kind of this literal playbook that you can look at, and to look at 3 different things that go on there. The self-awareness, your ability to lead and empower athletes, and your ability to choreograph the team dance.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't wait to read it. I'm not a coach, but I'm sure one day when I have a son, I'll probably be a coach. So it's probably a good idea to have now. I'm sure I could use it in business in some capacity too. So, John, this was
it has the leadership. It goes across the grain. Yeah.
Can't wait. John, this was absolutely fantastic. My last question is usually where can everyone reach you, but you did a pretty darn good job at explaining all that already. So
Thanks,
that's
Michael.
it. I am good. One more time, John Yeager, author of The Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. Buy it on Amazon. $1.99 might be right now, if not tomorrow. So thanks, John. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Thank you, Michael. Good to
Bye,
see you.
everybody.